Hello, and welcome to the NAACP Chicago Westside Branch Half Hour, where we talk about urban issues that affect the city of Chicago and its region. Today we have the continuation of some discussions that we had last week. I'm going to give you an update on what occurred and also some new information that was posted on Friday. Before we get started in our topics today, I'd like to let you know that you can contact the Westside NAACP branch at westsidenaacp@gmail.com. Give us a call at 773-261-5890 or come and see what we have going on at one of our monthly meetings. They occur every first Saturday of the month except for July, and we can be found at 5820 West Chicago Avenue at 60651. And so what we're going to be talking about today is the fact that last week the state law passed both the House and the Senate for Illinois that ups the minimum requirements for having a gun in the city of Chicago. So all repeat offenders will now have longer sentences in prison if they are found with a firearm. So that prison sentence will go from a minimum of 4 years to a minimum of 7 years. A minimum of 3 years to a minimum of 7 years with a maximum of 14 years. And with these new additions, it means that people will spend longer times in prison, which kind of goes along with what our national sessions has said about what is going to happen. The Attorney General has said about what is going to happen across the board with penalties that traditionally affect more Black and Hispanic people or males than any other group. So we're going to see a heightened prison call based on these higher sentences. It was a law that was presented by House Leader Durkin, and it was kind of supported by Muniz and Kwame Raoul to make it happen. It's kind of sad that we have the people that we think are representing us who are making these votes of yes. It did receive a number of yay votes and a number of nay votes, but of course the yays won at 36 to 12. And there were a number of complaints from the House saying that if you created these kinds of standards, then it was going to negatively affect people without actually doing any good. So there's been no proof that having a minimum sentencing of a higher degree was going to in any way prove any circumstances over the years. The war on drugs had that kind of policy put down, and it didn't prove anything in that situation. So it is thought that this new war on guns is going to be just as ineffective. In other news that happened last week on Friday, Mayor Rahm Emanuel announced that the city of Chicago will be looking to get an independent monitor for police reform in the city of Chicago. I did not come across any dates about when this was going to happen exactly, but it was announced that it will happen soon. This is a big announcement in reference to the things that the Westside branch has been fighting about and trying to raise voice and awareness of for the past 2 years, because when we first started our process back in 2015, our basis was to say that the Department of Justice needed to come to Chicago in order to watch and find out what was going on in the city of Chicago, particularly in the world of police misconduct and the things that are going on within the Chicago Police Department. We made this argument based on things that happened within the Independent Police Review Authority, which is now known as IPRA, and it's becoming COPA. And we also made this based on various shootings and killings that occurred across the city from police officers that seemed to be unjust and definitely were not being properly vetted on the justice side, that these officers were kind of being hidden away rather than actually standing before a jury and saying this is what happened, all the facts being presented, and then a judgment made. And so when we first started this thing, we said the Department of Justice needs to come on and find a pattern of practice of misconduct or just really a pattern of practice of whatever is going on in the city of Chicago. You come and research it, and then you come and you tell us. With the Laquan McDonald shooting that occurred or the video was released in November of 2015, that kind of woke the entire city up. Of course, as you probably recall, people began to hit the streets and began to come out and say, this is wrong. This officer is still working. He's still out on the streets, and someone is dead. This person was not a threat. What's going on? And it really shone a lot of light on the misconduct that was going on within the department, especially as it relates to young black males being shot and maimed in the street. So these things brought the Department of Justice. In December, they made the announcement that they would be coming and that it was going to take them about a year or so to conduct this research and this study into the city of Chicago's department's policies and standards and actions to see what was going on. So over the next year, with some recommendations from the NAACP as well as many other organizations that are active throughout the city, the department followed and shadowed various officers throughout the department. They looked through all the policies, they looked through all of the systems, they looked through all of the data, and they made an assessment about the patterns and practices of the police department. And it was found to be much more revealing than I think anyone would have thought about the things that go on or don't go on within the department and its subsidiary things like the police board, things like IPRA. All of these various entities were investigated because they play such a vital role in the police department's actions and their decision-making processes. So when they came out, they made this report. The report says everything is pretty much not working. Things are broken. The city of Chicago needs some deep reform. They need to look at their electronic systems. They need to look at their processes, their training. They need to look at the culture. Everything needs to be reevaluated and reformed in order to set things right. The report was published in January of this year, of 2017, and was widely understood to be, this is going to be the standard. In that time, the mayor of Chicago had begun to do some of his own reforms. He started setting up the Blue Ribbon group that they came out in February of 2016, and they listened to community members. They put out their document saying about the reformation that they intended to apply mostly just to the police department and even a little bit to IPRA, what they wanted to do, what they wanted to change. And then, of course, the IPRA ordinance was reevaluated and a new ruling was made about it in September of 2016. These things occurred as a, if you ask my opinion, facade of reformation. Kind of, we're going to keep doing a little something so that people will get out the streets. Majority of 2016, people were in the streets making their voices heard about their displeasure with what was going on within the police department in the city of Chicago as a whole. From this kind of disruption, that's kind of sparked everything. So we have this reformation, and as these things started to get voted on and approved, we started to make less noise as a community group in the streets of Chicago saying what's going on, and we started to quiet down. It brings us all the way to this point in now June of 2017, in which the mayor has told the Department of Justice, you know what, we know you have a consent decree, and we know you made this ruling that kind of says that we have to follow your process for reformation, but I think we've got this. We're going to just get an independent monitor. And this independent monitor is going to come through and make the reformation. Thank you, national. Thank you to the federal government, but we just don't need your help. We don't need your form of justice. The city of Chicago can handle it on its own. And this is something that groups like the NAACP and other groups are adamantly against, because these little times of disruption, of people having unrest about the way that justice occurs within a city, appears to happen every decade. I think it is in this time of technology, with the ability to have videos that can watch what people are doing and no longer make it seem as if officers who have done something that they should not have done always tell the truth. So in the past, anyone who got a ticket, if an officer says you did it, that's it. That's the end of the conversation. It's done. With the onset of all of us having a camera in our hand, those lies can be shown as such. And so now with this set of unrest that we're having in this decade, it's much more evident that the things that people have been saying for forever are true, and that reformation must happen in a much more decisive and exhaustive manner. And so we have an organization, we have a leadership right now in the city who has seen what's going on in the past and said, you want to know what? We've got an entirely new kind of administration in our federal government, and we can kind of get away with doing things the way that we did them before. We're just going to have to probably spend a little bit more money to hide the fact that we're not really reforming the city at all. And they're doing that now with the hiring of an independent monitor. About 2007, so exactly 10 years ago, is when the Independent Police Review Authority was created, also under the name of Independent, to monitor for the unrest that was going on in that time period. The Independent Police Review Authority was created. It was no different from the OPS that was its predecessor, and people kind of quieted down and let things ride, and IPRA continued to not function properly for the citizens of Chicago. Now COPA has been created, and it seems to show no difference between itself and the IPRA that was before it, but it's being called the reform that you wanted, the reform that you fought for. I, the mayor, am going to provide it for you free of charge to make sure that we can get this reformation that everybody's talking about they need. With this reformation coming through, there's no changes. It's supposed to become, I believe, final in September of this year. The independent monitor, which doesn't have a change, will also be acting, and both of these entities were scoped and created by the mayor, and therefore have no real opportunity to be any different from what we've seen in the past. We have no reason to believe that just because this monitor is so-called independent, that'll be any different from any other department, because it's being sought out by the mayor, it's being scoped out by the mayor, and it'll be something that he'll be in charge of. He'll be paying that bill from the city budget, and they'll be beholden to him and what changes he makes, and those changes have not proven to be any different from what we currently have. So with that being said, we think that this is not a good choice. This is not true reformation. It is a cover for reformation so that honest reformation does not occur. As we talked about in the past few weeks, the FOP, the Fraternal Order of Police contract, expires this month. And with the expiration of that contract, there's some opportunity for the City Council to approve a contract and a set of ruling that will bring some justice to officers who misbehave, who are doing things that they shouldn't. And without some true oversight from someone like a federal judge, the opportunity for us to see any actual reformation within this contract is very slim. We're going to have to look to someone, to an outsider, to come in and say, this is what you need to do based on the research that was done in this manner. Vanita Gupta, who was the head attorney over the Criminal Justice Department of the Department of Justice, has said that she believes that Chicago's decision to get an independent monitor is in fact the wrong decision, that it is something that is going to be woefully inadequate. It won't be able to cover what needs to be covered in terms of reformation, because there's no outsider, there's no third party that's able to say this doesn't actually seem just. No unbiased party that's going to be able to say this does not seem just. And so we have to look forward to doing something that's going to be looking at all voices, looking at all situations in order to bring about some change. We also wanted to point out that the independent monitor was announced, that no community organizations that we know of, and certainly not the NAACP, were notified and asked, what do you think? What are your choices? Nothing about the selection process for how this monitor is going to be pulled in has been revealed. And if it is like any of the other processes that have occurred within the city, community groups will not be acknowledged. They will not be asked their opinion. And this decision will be made for one monitor of the government to monitor itself versus having the people say, we're the ones that are suffering. Let us make contribution to this process and monitor it to make sure that we're getting the best oversight that we can to try to fix some of the things that have been done wrong to the people, to the citizens of Chicago. I want to take this moment because I did not announce it earlier to say I am taking call-ins. I do want to hear your questions and your thoughts about these topics. You can call at 312-738-1060. Let me know what you think about it. Do you think that an independent monitor is going to be the answer to our issues, that they will make sure that we are able to find justice when things occur wrong within the city? Or are you a part of the group that says, no, we need to have a federal judge so that if promises that are made are not kept, someone can come through and say, you did not keep this policy, or you broke this policy, and this is what you need to do to rectify that situation, which is what we would have if the city of Chicago were to fall into guidelines with what the Department of Justice has recommended and actually have court-ordered reformation going on within the city. We really want to know what you think. The NAACP is looking at this widely. We want to hear from the voices of the community to know how you feel about what reformation is. Do you think that things are okay in the city of Chicago, that they have gotten better? Were you happy to hear that the Blue Ribbon Task Force came through and that they made their set of recommendations? Do you think it's enough? Do you think the city of Chicago is in a position to completely govern itself in this terms of justice? Have you suffered from injustice in Chicago? Have you suffered from injustice from the police department? Do you think that your situation could have been handled better? How so? Let me know what you think. We have a few minutes left in our half hour today to discuss these things and to find out what is going on with the people in the city of Chicago. To that point, we are going to be making our opinions known about how a monitor, whether it's something called an independent monitor or more like what we're looking for, a court order, should be, how it should look within the city of Chicago. We know from listening to people's stories and hearing what's going on within various community groups, what people are looking for and what they're hoping for, and then we know as citizens and individuals ourselves what we would want to see. If we were a victim of a situation, what we would want to know was the outcome of the offender. This goes for the offender of people right there on the street, but also about officers who are engaged in misconduct. There has been a code of silence not only from the department itself, but a code of silence within the oversight communities in which they cover up officers that they know have done wrong because they just don't want things to look bad. They want to keep things going as a status quo. And our aldermen are agreeing to this via contracts like the FOP contract, the sergeant's contract, in which they say, I really think that they just don't know what's in the contract, but they're saying, these policies that you have that are not really providing justice for anyone, they are fine. They're going to ride through. Things are going to be okay. And it is on us as the citizens to know what's going on within our department. We already know what's going on with us in our own homes and on our streets, to make that known to our represented officials. And if they're not listening, if they're not willing to actually represent our thoughts and our ideas, it is on us to put them out of their seat and put someone into the seat who does actually represent the people of their ward, represent the people that they're talking about, not representing the viewpoints of the mayor or the viewpoints of the majority. And that's something that's pretty obvious when we look at the higher sentencing for people with guns, because they were not considered. They did not represent what the people wanted. They represented what their leader told them to do. And it looks like we have a caller. Caller, I can hear you.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
I wanted to know what you thought about Bill Maher comment about saying he was in the house and then he used the N-word. I wanted to know why I haven't heard anything from the NAACP or any other organization cry out about, you know, for his suspension or for getting him fired. Because I'll tell you what, there was a Republican that said that. Oh man, all heck with a broke loose. Thank you so much.
Hold on, sir. Hold on, caller. I'm not familiar with the Bill Maher incident. Could you explain it to me a little bit? Oh, okay. Our caller is gone. So I'm not familiar with the Bill Maher incident. That could be one reason why we haven't spoken out about it. Is the criminal justice chair is not aware of that situation. But I will look into it. I will find out what's going on with Bill Maher and what he said and when he said it. And we might be able to make some comment about that and to make some requests and demands in that regard. The NAACP a number of years ago did bury the N-word, so it is not something that we are at all accepting of, and especially not coming from our elected officials. They should have more class than that, and they should be able to express themselves differently. So I will look into that situation. Thank you for calling and letting me know about that. To that caller's point, that is related to what we were talking about in terms of when someone does something, when they don't represent you in the way that you should, that they should, we have an obligation to speak up about it. The NAACP, and just so you know, is a volunteer-run organization. I'm a volunteer. My president is a volunteer. We are all people who I have a full-time job. This is not what I do full-time, and I go with my information based on what I come across, what I read, and what I hear about. So to that point, I encourage you to call us, send us articles, let us know when you hear about things that have not maybe been mass media, something that hasn't been on the front page of the paper that you hear about that strikes you, that affects you. Let us know, because we do want to know. Sometimes we get caught late and we might not find out about something until it's too late for us to really put forth the action that we really wanted to put in order to halt that thing. That's actually the discussion that we just had on Saturday in our last monthly meeting, is that we do need to get more access to more information so that we can be ahead of things and be able to speak out about things that go against what we believe is the proper way to address our community. And so I encourage you to please let us know when you hear something. Email us, call us, let us know, this is what I heard, this is what I think. Let us consider your opinion, let us know. Or show up at our meetings and say, did you hear about this? Do you know about this? How do you feel about that? We are glad to hear it, and we really want to be able to be your voice when we're sitting at tables with elected officials, with municipal representatives and departmental representatives. We like to be able to say this is what the people are concerned with, this is what we are concerned with, and this is what you need to do as an elected official or a representative to change that. And so I encourage you to come forward, let us know, let us put things forward so that we can make sure that we're having our voice on your behalf, on all of the community's behalf. We want to hear about it. So as we look to wrap up, we have a minute or so left to talk about what does that monitor mean to you? Is that something that's going to affect you directly? And I can tell you most certainly that it does. Sometimes we hear people say that they don't vote or they're not engaged in their process because it doesn't matter, they don't count. But sometimes when we don't vote, it is a vote for the person that we don't want in charge, like what happened in our last presidential election. And then we all suffer because policies and standards are being created that affect us directly. Things that we never thought, oh, we thought this is such high level, it's never going to come down to me. It comes down to you when you're not able to call the police and trust that they're going to be able to properly address your situation and treat you like a human being as they address your situation. If something goes wrong, they have some fear that there will be a penalty to be paid for misconduct, something that keeps them in check to say, I have to treat all human beings as human beings. So it's something to consider as you go about your daily business. Make sure that you're looking out and putting out speaking to your neighbors, talking to your friends, encouraging them to vote, and making sure, even as you encourage to vote, that you're looking at all of the facts. As we wrap up, I just want to invite you one more time to contact us at the Westside NAACP email address, or give us a call, or come and visit us every first Saturday. Thank you, and bye-bye.